strong.
Hello, and welcome back for episode 2. I appreciate all the love and support that I got on the first episode. Here's a little late night action. Today we're going to talk about leadership, some of the stories that I learned how to be a better leader, and some of the ways that we can all be better leaders, and just my thought process on how leadership comes into play about everything. All right, here we go. So I'm just going to do a quick story about, I guess, how I became, some may say a leader, some may say not. But I think leadership was instilled in me by my parents, and they always kept talking about it, and you need to learn how to lead and all this stuff. It really didn't come into reality until understanding about sports. So sports was kind of like where I learned how to become a better leader, or where I learned what leadership looks like. So like when it came to youth sports, everyone's like, oh, the best athlete, whoever's the best on the team is always the leader. And as I grew up, I realized that that's not the truth at all. There's been so many teams that many people have played on that just because you're the best doesn't mean you're the best leader. I put it in perspective of my senior year at St. Joe. I was one of 2 captains, and it was myself and Matt Holmes, and then we had Dylan Kelsey as the junior captain. But I was one of 2 seniors, and let's just say Matt Holmes might not have played the most minutes on the team, but that man knew how to pick us up when we were down, pick us up when we were playing bad, and he really was the glue that made our team run. And it through loyalty, through responsibility, through working his butt off in practice every day, he led by showing our younger players on the team that no matter how much time you get in the game, you're always need to put your best foot forward and work your butt off no matter what. So right now we're gonna dive into a little bit of what people have been asking me on Instagram. And so the first question we're gonna ask is from one of my friends, Javi. Follow his podcast because it's amazing. Juice Films. Look it up on Instagram, Twitter, or I'm always hyping it up on my story on Instagram. So look it up, follow it, because he's doing great things. He says, are people born leaders, or do leaders become one? I do think you might see leadership in someone's personality at a younger age. So there's he was born a leader. I think leaders are made through many different circumstances, through growing up in tough neighborhoods, to being amazing, growing up in an amazing household, to being a really good human being. I think leadership's an opinion. I think everyone thought Hitler was a great leader at some point. So I think leadership is a huge opinion. So I don't think people are born leaders. I think they might have somewhat more qualities that someone might look for in a leader. But I do think it's their surroundings and their choices in life that help them become better leaders. So Zach Neary, he asked, when presented with a leadership role, how do you go about finding what works? To me, it's trial and error. I think being put in a leadership role at wherever you are, in a company or in your friend group or in sports, art, wherever you are in life, being put in a leadership role, I think you have to be truly honest with yourself, do a lot of digging deep, self-evaluation. I've messed up many of times in how I've conducted myself as a leader in different roles, but for me, I look at it as a huge thing of trial and error. I know, and I think it's also reading who's around you, like reading my staff. And I think getting to know my staff in a huge way, not just like on the surface level, but diving deep into who they are. And I know who I can push to become better and make them live outside their comfort zone so they do develop. And I know that there's people that are just really good at their job and they're here to do their job to the best of their ability, and that's what they want to do and go home to their family. So I think what works is just truly understanding that you have to look at it in many different ways. So keep pushing to figure out the way that you want to lead. So someone says, at what point is leading by example not good enough? What would be the next steps? It's a good question. I think there'd have to be follow-up question, is leading by example not good enough? I think leading by example is the number one way for me. But to answer your question, it's not good enough. The next steps for me would be having a conversation with whoever I'm in charge of. Maybe it's in charge of a project group, or you're in charge of a team, you're in charge of the household. I think there needs to be a little bit of say, whatever voice you're involved in. I think that's the next step, is being just very transparent in, hey, like, I don't think my leadership skills are working right now. What can I do and what can we do to be better? I think that would be the next steps. Jamie asked, how do you show vulnerability without losing respect? I think that's a huge thing that's going on. But for me, I'll answer it for me. I show vulnerability. I think my staff has seen me cry. I think being vulnerable to my friends and to my family and to everybody that's around me, and being transparent. Like, I'm a huge advocate of positivity, and can't have a bad day. You can have a bad moment in the day. But I'm also a big advocate of, I'm not going to hold my emotions in because I'm a man and men don't cry. I'm going to show my staff that when something occurs in my life, that I'm very transparent in feeling like if you ask me, I will share it with you, because I don't want there to be some big gap in between us. So I really think there's a fine line, Jamie, of like telling everybody what's going on. And if you look at it like, oh, well, today my car got pooped on. See, to me, that's like, okay, you're kind of complaining constantly. But showing vulnerability is like, hey, like this happened to me and it sucked. And I think you can talk about it a lot in your coaching meetings with your staff, or you're coaching with individual players, or your project, wherever you're that coaching. Like, I've been through what you're going through. This is how I helped myself get through it. Instead of kind of saying, oh, well, a bird pooped on my car today. I don't think that's vulnerability. But I do understand what you are saying. I I've never had that feeling because of not being a woman. I do think there might be a huge different feeling when it comes to women in power and showing their vulnerability and like other people losing respect. I think that's just a huge, terrible culture thing that we have. And I think there's a Nike commercial that Serena Williams does that just talks about it so much, and she does it beautifully. And so I do understand where you're coming from on that. And for me, I think it's okay to do it. For anybody else, that's just my tip. Be as transparent and real as possible, because we're all humans and people understand that. So for that question, I would just be like, completely just be vulnerable. But like have gauges. You shouldn't be like, oh yeah, going back to it. You shouldn't be going back to it like, oh yeah, the bird pooped on my car. I think you might lose respect because you're like, okay, cool, no one really cares. Moving on. Another one is Emmy asked, what makes a good leader? For me, I think being transparent is huge. I also think leading by example is huge. And I also think showing empathy and kindness. I think that's lost with a lot of things that are going on. But showing empathy is understanding people go through a lot of stuff throughout the day, throughout the year. And to be able to be by their side, no matter what, in different times, I think that is huge. Kindness, I think, rules the world. In a terrible situation, you can be kind. That person will always come back to you to pick your brain about advice. I think that's something that I shoot for, is just being a lending ear and being real, and also flipping it and just showing kindness. She also asked, how can a leader fail? I think for me, as a leader can fail is by not putting people in the right positions to succeed. If you are a leader of anything, if you're a leader of a project and you're in 5th grade and you know your friend is awful at art, don't put him in that situation where he has to do all the art for your project. Put him in a situation he's great at telling stories, so he might be, or she might be, the person that is up presenting the diagram to the whole class. You gotta put people in situations where they can grow, or situations where they can be successful. Because a little bit is just, don't let yourself fail as a leader because you're putting a square into a round hole. It doesn't make sense. There's a whole different world when it comes to coaching and growth, but I think leadership is something that you need to practice. And I also think leadership can easily be failed by just not putting people in the right positions, or not teaching them and telling them, I'm putting you in this position because it's uncomfortable, but I want you to grow. And last but not least, I think the greatest quote I heard, and I forget who it's by, but leadership is not a word, it's an action. Let's do that one more time. It's not a word, it's an action. So go out and be the best leader that you can be to wherever you are and whatever facet of life you're in. And like we always say, don't be average, be amazing. Much love. Remember to like, comment, hit the ring button, and keep supporting local people doing amazing things. Have a good night.